Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
All right, well, welcome back. It's our tradition to start by going around and introducing ourselves, so we'll start with that. My name is Peter.
Darren.
Ron.
I'm Bob.
Joe.
Baruch.
Dennis.
May.
Paul.
Nobu.
Chris.
Peter.
Larry.
John.
Jim.
Mark. Ari.
Mark.
Marvin.
Jay.
Clinton.
Steve.
Michael.
Paul.
Jack. Dave.
Peter.
Tom.
Jason.
David.
Ray. Is that everyone?
All right. George.
Okay. Today's speaker is Sean Feit. Is it Feit or Feit?
Yes.
And we have a little blurb here which I'll read, and then you can add whatever you like, Sean. Sean Feit has practiced meditation, both Zen and Vipassana, since 1993, and yoga since 1994. He's been leading meditation and chanting practice since 1999. He's a student of Jack Kornfield and Eugene Cash at Spirit Rock, where he completed the first dedicated practitioners program. He was a monk in Burma in 2002 and has recently returned from practice in India. He teaches meditation and yoga, piano and harmonium, and leads kirtan, is that his name? In his native Bay Area. Sean says, chanting is the practice of love made audible. So that's quite a tall order for this morning, and I'm happy to turn the discussion over to Sean.
Thank you so much. That is a tall order. If I think about having done so many things, it gets a little overwhelming. Wow. The first thing I'm just interested in asking you all, that's nice, that's all. When Dean asked me to come and speak here, he said that just a little bit about you all as a sangha, and particularly he said that the men here are practicing in a number of different traditions. So to give me a sense of where we're all at, what we're practicing. How many people here are practicing in a Theravadan or Vipassana-based tradition? Great. How many people have their roots more in Zen or Mahayana practice? Great. And how many in Vajrayana or Tibetan practice? No Tibetans. I'm so surprised. All right. And then anyone who has their meditative roots in a non-Buddhist tradition, like in yogic meditation, Jewish meditation, other traditions. Great. And then, as Peter said, I'm at the moment my roots are sunk deeply in the Theravadan and Vipassana tradition, but I began in Zen practice, and that was my first wonderful heart practice for many years. So, good. So I thought today that we would do a couple of things. One is I would love to spend some time chanting with you, and it was one of the things Dean said would be really exciting. It's part of my practice, and I'd love to just start with it. So. How many folks here have a chanting practice or are familiar with a chanting practice in your tradition? Whatever it is. There's a few heads kind of going, a little bit. So, in all of the Asian traditions, chanting is one of the most common forms of expressing our practice. And I don't want to say too much about it, I just want to do it. So, the only important thing for me really to say about it is that it's not music in the traditional sense, which means it's not about how good you sound, which is really fortunate for many of us. It's actually an expression of your practice. So in the same way as when you come to sit, it's not necessarily important that you sit down and you have, the most perfect Buddha-like posture and the most empty sky-like mind. Who does? A few people, maybe. Certainly a few. But that what matters is your sincerity and your presence. You come, you sit down, you practice. That's the stream that takes you to liberation, not your particular skill necessarily at doing the act of sitting. So, in the same way with the chanting practice, it's a practice of offering. So it comes from very ancient traditions of sacrifice and giving. It's a practice of offering our intention, our voices, our sound, making a physical manifestation toward that which we love. And what we love in this context, one of the things we love is practice. This is practice. We all come for a reason here. I want to talk a little about that. So, the chant is a way of saying, I love this thing I do. I love this thing we're here to do together. And then we love aspects of that practice. Maybe we love the Buddha himself, or we love Kuan Yin, the goddess, or we just love silence, stillness, or teachings. So the chanting practice is an expression of that love. So we'll chant 2 mantras from the Buddhist tradition. The first really well-known mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om is the universal sound, Mani is the jewel in the heart, Padma or Padme is lotus, the lotus flower that the Buddha sits on. And hum is a Sanskrit magical word. It doesn't mean anything. It's kind of an exclamation point. Om Mani Padme Hum. And we'll go right from that into a mantra honoring the goddess in her form of Kuan Yin. Namo Kuan Shi Yin Pusa. Namo Kuan Shi Yin Pusa. Which means I honor the one who hears the cries of the world. I honor that infinite goddess, mother of the universe, who hears the cries of beings. And we'll chant in call and response for a few minutes. So I'll chant the mantra once around, and then we'll all chant it together. Just go back and forth in that way. We'll repeat it many times.
Om
Atmani Padmeham, we honor wisdom. We honor the manifestation of wisdom, the arising of wisdom in the heart. Namo Kwan Shuryan Pusa, we honor the infinite mother. The mother who manifests infinite compassion, radiant compassion for all beings. Great. So, I'm thinking about the chanting practice a little and feeling into it. I want to talk a little bit about feeling as part of practice, and really to talk about passion as part of practice, and some of the threads that lead from passion. And the chanting practice, as I've taken it on, as I practice it, is sort of a combination of the Buddhist chanting practice, which is often didactic. It's to teach certain things, especially in the Theravadan tradition. The texts are really, you're chanting things like, the world is swept away, it does not endure. I will lose everything and die soon. Better practice hard. They lead to a certain kind of dispassion, a certain kind of renunciation. And we'll get on to renunciation a little bit, I hope. And then in the Tibetan tradition, very much influenced by its relationship to India and the way that the Tibetan tantric tradition and the Indian tantric tradition are very interwoven. In some places almost synonymous, especially in Kashmir, the way the traditions merged around that area. The chanting practice has a much stronger flavor of what's called bhakti in the yogic tradition. Bhakti, translating as love or devotion, is a huge part of the yogic path in India. And it really consists of, it's a way of practice where you sort of make up, in a way, a dualism, a sort of ultimately false dualism, but a useful dualism between yourself and the divine. So, in that tradition, let's say that the Buddha is not only just this person, this man, Shakyamuni, Gautama, 2,400 years ago or so, who woke up through his own practice and then began to teach the path of waking up to people. But if we take this abstraction that started to happen a few hundred years after him, that he became in his awakening not just an awakened man, but a manifestation of awakeness energy, sort of the truth of all things as awakeness energy, Buddha nature. And so then he becomes, in a way, a symbol or an image of this Buddha nature. Not just a person, but the thing that is actually the true nature of each of us, as Buddha, as just awake, as awareness itself. So, when that happens, then there's the possibility of creating an image of the divine and setting it sort of on a pedestal outside of ourselves. And, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, right? We know from Western tradition, from Christian tradition, I'm most familiar with, some of the shadow side of doing that, right? God is far away, outside, up there. And if you do all the right things and please Him, you can go be in the nice place. And if you screw up, curtains for you. And I suspect a lot of us in the room, came to other practices, like Buddhist practice, partly to step out of that model a little bit. And I came to Theravadan practice because the instructions were really clear, and there was no fluff. It was like, sit down, pay attention, do your work, see what's true. Straight up. That really appealed. It really appeals to me. At a certain point, though, I found that one of the things that wasn't arising so much in my life was passionate engagement. And this Theravadan path tends to, it was a monastic path for renunciates, tends toward dispassion, generally, in the instructions. Tends toward let go of the world, let go of your attachments, let go of the body, let go of the mind, let go of family, wealth, entertainment, and do this strict, clear work of just liberating. Then at a certain point, particularly when my practice became quite difficult on retreat, different times, there would be this upwelling of the urge to pray, And I think it partly just comes out of the feeling that I can't do this alone. At a certain point, this strict renunciation of just this individual sort of heart-mind looking clearly, unvarnishedly at reality, it's tough. It's tough. And at a certain point I was like, I need some help. This is hard. And I said, okay, what do I want to do? And my teachers encouraged me. They said, what do you really want to do in this moment? This is like a little crux in your practice. What do you do? And I went out walking in the hills and I thought, what do I really want to do? And I was like, I want to sing to the mother is what I want. And I think the upwelling of that was part of, I want to have the sense that there's some support for this thing. And so this is part of the bhakti path. And bhakti really means you set up this thing to be devoted to, and then you devote yourself to it fully. You sing to Krishna or Radha, or the Buddha, or Tara, Bodhisattva, or Jesus, Mother Mary, endlessly, singing, or praying. My mother, I didn't even really know, of course, during her life, because I thought, she's just she's kind of superstitious and medieval, and she goes to church every day. She just prays all the time. She didn't seem particularly free to me. But it turned out that on her mind, in her thoughts, all the time was God. And her prayer was really like, help us. Make sure this person is safe. Make sure that person is safe. She was doing metta practice. So the bhakti is really, you set up this little dualism, then you ask for help, and you honor the divine, you honor the manifestations of the divine, wisdom and compassion, over and over and over, until the dualism begins to break down. And you notice that Kuan Shu Yin, the one who hears the cries of the world with compassion, you notice your own compassion starting to flower. I'm starting to notice other people suffering a little more. This is Kuan Yin arising in the heart, in the lotus in the heart. And so the chanting practice is part of a little doorway into feeling our own passion a little more. Our passion for awakeness, for truth. And to use that passion, to use the energy of emotional engagement. It's one of the ways you use emotion in this path. Often in the Vipassana practice, the way you use emotion is by watching it from a distance, as if it's a fractious child or something. And you're like, oh look, I'm angry. Look at that. And then it passes, and some fear comes. You say, oh look, I'm terrified. And you watch it bubble around. You feel heat in the body. And it moves around, and you notice, fear. And you stay really chill, you don't do anything. And it passes. This is an amazing practice. But there are other ways of working with emotion, and one of them is to say, all right, anger. Bring it on, let's do it. And you feel it, and you let it fill you. And you see, what's that anger pointing at? What's the energy of anger, actually? Besides the story that's like, he wronged me. In the Dhammapada, it says, wander around with thoughts like, he did me wrong, he beat me, he scorned me, he stole my stuff. Wander around with thoughts like that, you'll never get anywhere. You're downtrodden. Let go of thoughts like that, and freedom arises. This is sort of classic Buddhist teaching. And the tantric teaching that arose somewhat later, really in the same stream, said, okay, well, what if you can't always do that? Then what do you do? And some pretty perceptive practitioners said, well, actually, if I really stay with it, wild anger, incredible anger is here. What's actually here is energy. There's really this kind of drawing, when you're really just furious, this drawing in of energy, and you burn. And some yogis said, okay, I've just been practicing toward burning all this time. I'm like, light the fire. Here's some fire. Use it. So how do you use anger? And they said, well, first you do the little skillful act of disconnecting a little bit from the story that the anger is connected to. So you notice, oh, I'm angry because he did this, etc., etc. Say, okay, forget the because. Stuff happens in life. But you say, let's just use the fire. So you drop the story over and over, and you just feel the burn. Burning. And you notice, in practice, then, that the energy of anger is discrimination, is cutting. When you're angry, you really see how things are. You know, you're angry at General Hospital because you broke your arm and you waited for 15 hours in the waiting room, you know, because there's no funding. So you're angry, but one of the things you might notice is that, you know, the funding system doesn't work. And you're just like, you cut through the politics around it, your ideas around it, you just notice that doesn't work. And there's this clarity behind it. And that clarity can be a force that drives people to activism. You know, I'll fix this. I'll do something about that. And you can also take that sword, this is the sword of Manjushri, one of the Buddhist deities, wields a flaming sword, his statue. And it's the sword of discrimination. Cuts through illusion. And it's burning. It's not just a sword, it's a burning sword. You know, here's someone who's in touch with their passion and using it in a skillful way. So then the hinge of that practice, of this passionate practice, hinges on, are you able to be skillful? Like, okay, you feel the burn, you're in it. Now what do you do? And a huge part of what gets us into trouble around life is acting on our passions without really being skillful, without actually knowing what will come of this action. We feel passionate, positive passionate or negative passionate, either one. You feel the big energy arise. And what do? How do you actually move with it? And mostly, often, lots of us, we act kind of bursting right out of that gate, without really considering. We just go with it. We smash the glass. And then later we say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have smashed the glass. Maybe I should have said, I'm really upset with you right now. And I want to smash this glass, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to tell you what's actually happening for me and see if we can come to understanding, come towards some wisdom. Or whatever you choose to do. So here's a teaching from the Buddha then. And he taught this to his son Rahula, who was 9 years old. Which kind of is one way that it feels really relevant for most of us. You know, I feel like, okay, the Buddha's son, he was 9. So maybe he at 9 and me at 36, maybe we're doing, about the same. If I'm lucky. Rahula was a young monk. He had followed his father into monasticism, and he was a little novice monk. And the Buddha, and it doesn't tell what incident inspired this teaching, by the way, but he's 9, so I imagine, he did something that didn't turn out so well. And his dad came along and was like, all right, Rahula, here's how to practice. And he gives this great practice. difficult. He says, before you do something, think about whether it would be harmful or not. Think about the consequences of your action. Pretty simple. Most of us are taught this. And he says, and while you're in the middle of doing something, think about whether it's harmful or not. Think about the consequences of your actions while you're doing it. And then after you're finished doing it, think about the consequences. Did it work? Was it harmful or not? So he essentially says, really take care with how you act. Really take care. And think about this unfolding of karma. Karma, big subject. I'm not going to go into it much. But the idea is all of your actions have their effects. Everything that happens unfolds in time. And that really what we can do as practitioners, and this is kind of on all levels, on sort of physical, out in your life kind of levels, and on very internal levels, while you're sitting, what you're doing, how you're placing your attention, what we can do is add our 2 cents to the sort of karmic stream that's already flooding along. Like, my tendency is to think about architecture while I'm sitting. This is actually one of my tendencies. So, I noticed, I like to design little houses while I'm sitting. I used to do it for years. And mostly I've stopped. But sometimes, there I am, designing a little house. I think I would just love to have that kind of security. And so that karmic stream arises in my sitting. And then what do I do in relation to it? I can sort of go with it, go with that strong energy of habit, and be thinking about my favorite distraction. Or I can detach from the story of it a little bit and just notice that I'm distracted. We do this all the time in sitting. And decide not to run with it. And say, okay, I know that story, and I'm going to hang back and just do this paying attention to breathing thing. And if I make that choice a whole bunch of times, maybe thousands of times I'll make that choice, I'll start to recondition that karmic stream, that habitual stream. So, in the beginning of the scripture where the Buddha gives meditation instructions, different scripture, the Satipatthana Sutta, he has this quote that I really love, that's sort of the seed of this whole area of discussion. And the quote is, he's talking about sort of how to practice. Become aware of the body in the body. Maintain awareness of feelings in feelings, of the mind in the mind. And this is sort of, he's naming these ways to be mindful, or ways to pay attention. And after each one, when he introduces it, when he's saying, pay attention in this way, pay attention to the body in the body, right? That's a mysterious, little mystical phrase itself. The body in the body, what's that? But for now, this is what he says, the body in the body, and then he says, in this way, the practitioner abides, ardent, mindful and fully aware, having set aside covetousness and grief for the world. This is his little tagline. In this way, the practitioner abides, or rests, ardent, mindful and fully aware, having set aside covetousness and grief for the world. A huge teaching in this sentence. First thing you do when you come to practice is you set aside covetousness and grief for the world. There's a way that you take the seat and you say, all of the grasping and grieving in the world, for the moment, I'm just setting it aside. The word grief is interesting here because I don't think it means setting aside our own grief, the sort of the emotional truth of our human life that has so much grieving in it. That feels like such a natural part of practice to me. I think it's more in the terms of setting aside covetousness, sort of grasping an aversion in a way. It's grief as a sort of a translation like aversion for the world. Setting aside grasping an aversion for the world, the practitioner abides, ardent, mindful, and fully aware. So mindful and fully aware we talk about a lot. Pay attention, keep paying attention. When you move away into distraction, just notice that's happening and come back into paying attention. These really basic practice instructions. But this first word, ardent, he includes in this, like, these are the basic things you do when you practice, is you abide ardent. So, my teacher Eugene looks up words in the dictionary. So I looked it up in the dictionary. And the definition of ardent was to burn, right? The same root as arid, as in the desert. To burn, warm or intense in feeling, passionate, intensely enthusiastic or devoted, zealous, glowing, radiant, burning, aflame. So the Buddha says, the practitioner abides burning. The practitioner abides intensely enthusiastic. Suddenly this is at odds with the Theravadan coolness of the Buddha tradition. Right? All of these images we get of liberation as being cooling or releasing or cooling of the passions. The Buddha says the practitioner abides passionate. So, what does it mean to practice ardently? And the Bhakti path points to this in some ways. One of my teachers said that when he first heard the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the reality of release from suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to that release, he cried. Amazing. As a young man, probably like most of us as young men, trained not to cry. He cried when he first heard just someone say in this simple way, there is suffering. It's true. This is why. This is the cause of suffering. Grasping out of ignorance is the cause of suffering. Grasping onto that which cannot be grasped. Experience which is by itself fleeting, which can never provide lasting happiness because of its insubstantiality. Grasping in this way is the cause of suffering. The end of suffering is just the release of that grasping. That's all. Just the opening of the hand. And of the path is all of the things we have to cultivate in order to be able to actually do that. To open the hand. To open the hand. So he heard a truth and was moved passionately. One of the things I'm passionate about in practice is persistence or patience. Turns out that one of my skills as a practitioner is patience. I can sit there for months on end, feeling like I'm getting nowhere. Nothing flashy happens. No big lightning storms of Kundalini arise. But I'm doggedly persistent. And I just sat there for years and years and years. And at a certain point, as this very much subtler than what I was hoping for peace was arising, it occurred to me that one of the things that was the most precious to me about my own practice was my patience. I was willing to just come back again and again and again. And I think it's going to be different for each of us, sort of, because this is in relation to emotion, passions. The thing that fires you up, each of you, will be different. So some people love chanting to Krishna, and they find their practice chanting Gopala, 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 Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I also love this practice. But there are some people where that's their whole practice. That's what they love to do. Or they'll go to church. They'll go to Christian church Sunday, 8 hours of service. In the sort of Pentecostal traditions, evangelical traditions, and just sing 7.5 hours of this singing, and the rest is a little sermon about who to vote for. No offense at all. No, wonderful tradition, particularly in the bhakti. Just singing. So it points back, it sort of ties into this instruction to Rahula to do what's skillful. Right? What for you is both the most skillful doorway into your practice, and what's the thing about practice that lights your fire, that gets you really excited? Why do you come here? So I'd love actually to hear from a couple of people this thing about passion for practice. So what do you just not even like or respect or get something out of practice? All of that's good. But what do you love about practice, about this meditative practice? Any aspect of it? That some people offer.
Well, I practice metta a lot, and I like that. But I just wanted to comment that, the Kundalini energy that you're talking about, I rarely experience outside of long retreats.
Right.
And so I'm very interested and kind of enthusiastic about something that I could daily do to express my passion in chanting, and I want to learn more. I'll talk to you afterwards. I went to another chanting practice, and it didn't work for me. But I love the music, and I love the the rifting you were able to do. Apparently, you were improvising. Is that true?
Say that last.
Were you improvising a little bit?
A little bit, sure, of course.
Yeah. I like that aspect of it because it might help me to put some passion in practice, which often to me is very sterile because the passion isn't there.
Right. One of the modern American chant leaders, Krishna Das, very popular. He says, we take this practice, which is actually quite serious, repeating the names of God, and we coat it in the sweet sugar syrup of music in order to make it, in order to get us to take it on more. Make it beautiful. Make it beautiful. Yeah. Other things people love about practice. Everyone must love something because you're here, right? Say.
What I love about my practice is it helps me understand myself better.
Yeah.
And so that helps me, I guess, it affects other people as well because it affects my behavior and how I interact with other people.
Yeah. So this understanding of yourself better, in a way it's like loving the wisdom aspect of practice. Loving the way that the teachings and the process of actually just sitting in the presence of oneself is transformative. Bringing our heart's energy to that. Yes.
I love the moments of joy that just kind of pop up now and then unexpectedly, and I'm looking at a tree and it's just so beautiful and life feels so abundant, and I don't know why that comes up sometimes and goes away, but it just pops up now and then.
It does. And you feel its connection to your practice. It's not just random in your life, it's connected. Yeah. Who wouldn't love that? Random arisings of joy. It happens more and more as you pay attention. The yogis say that one of the flavors of the true nature of everything is bliss. So actually, if you just pay attention enough, it's not a dry, sterile place. It's actually a blissful place. That's the invitation. How about Sangha? Here we all are gathered in a room together. Who loves Sangha? I mean, it's amazing to gather in a room of men together. How often do you get to do this? Gathering in a room with our hearts set on something beautiful, right? not our hearts just set on distraction or entertainment, which is one of the ways we often gather, but with our hearts set on liberation, this beautiful thing. What are you going to?
I was just going to echo that. I think my passion is it takes me out of my isolated self into a feeling of connection, or at least when I'm into it,
right.
A feeling of connection with a greater, deeper, vaster whole than just me and my ego.
Yeah.
It's very powerful when that happens.
Huge.
It is.
Huge. Taking out of ourselves a little bit.
I was just going to say relatively kind of the same thing when I sit down to meditate, particularly there's a rich experience of community here and connectedness. Just there's an energy present when everyone's together. But when I'm practicing on my own, I have a similar experience. It's more ephemeral, but it's a much greater experience of connectedness and attachment to the great energy.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, this word attachment, good one. It gets a complicated reputation in Buddhism, right? Because some people will even translate the cause of suffering as attachment. A yogic text I was reading lately said defined attachment. So what actually is detachment? And it said it's the combination of paying attention to something and applying and having intense emotional energy. The combination of paying attention to something and having intense emotional energy behind that paying attention leads to attachment. I'm not sure I agree with the definition, but it's an interesting one. I think looking at it that way would also lead to some kind of dispassion. Like, well, okay, that attachment is going to root me to being fixated in some way on something, so I'm going to step back a little bit. I think the Buddha was a little more precise when he said it's not just the paying attention and the depth of feeling with which you pay attention. He's asking us to pay attention with a depth of feeling. But whether we're doing the relatively unskillful action of trying to fixate reality, trying to say, I want things just like this and not different, essentially, or if we're not grasping in that way, if we're not saying, I want things to be other than they are, then we offer our passion, we practice passionately, and then maybe this is the twister at the end. You practice passionately, and then you let go of the results. And this is the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll just read a tiny passage from there. A couple little things to end. Krishna says, this is Krishna giving meditation instructions to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kuru. He says, concentrate every thought on me alone. Previously to this, he said, what I am is the infinite void. So he's not just saying, concentrate on Krishna, but concentrate on the infinite, but on me as the infinite. Concentrate every thought on me alone with a mind fully absorbed, one-pointed. You will live within me forever. If you find you are unable to center your thoughts on me, strengthen your mind by the steady practice of concentration. This is pretty straightforward. That's what a lot of us do. Then he says, if this is beyond your powers, dedicate yourself to me, performing all actions for my sake. Right, so maybe a little more doable. Everything you do in your life, do it for the sake of the infinite, for the sake of truth, of true love. And he says, if even this is beyond you, this is nice. He's like, okay, maybe you can't even do that. It's hard. He says, rely on that basic teaching. Act always without attachment, surrendering your actions' fruits. So, another way of saying that, this common phrase, do your work, then step back. So you do your work passionately. You put all you have into it, into a sitting. Half an hour, I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to be still, I'm going to focus on the breath, whatever particular practice you're doing. And then, at the end of the half hour, whatever happened, even if you caught 3 breaths in that whole half hour, you say, thank you for being here, body, mind, thank you for your practice. That's it. No more. You don't spend the whole day going, I really didn't meditate very well this morning. Mostly because it's just not that useful. It's just not useful to do it. So Sri Nisargadatta, he says, he's talking about earnestness. the questioner says, once I've made up my mind to find reality, what do I do next? And Maharaj, Sri Nisargadatta, he says, if you are earnest, whatever way you choose will take you to your goal. It is earnestness that is the decisive factor. And the questioner says, what is the source of earnestness? And Maharaji says, it is the homing instinct, which makes the bird return to its nest and the fish to the mountain stream where it was born. The seed returns to the earth when the fruit is ripe. Ripeness is all. So your earnestness, your passionateness, there's this emotional quality to it. And it's also just like the stream, just like the river. The river running passionately toward the ocean. Actually, it just falls. It's just falling. It just takes the lowest path. It just falls. So part of the practice is to open the hand just enough to release into the stream, flowing toward that which is rest, allowing yourself to be moved toward rest, and letting your passion, your fire, be some of the fuel for that gravity, letting yourself drop deeper and deeper. I'd love to chant some more, but we're at our time. We should have our announcements. Yeah?
We can go about 5 minutes more if you'd like.
All right, we'll go 5 minutes over. We'll do a little chanting. So, it's always like that. Maybe when I'm 80 and I've been teaching for a long time, I'll know how to shut up sooner and sing more. So a little bit of chanting then. You chant honoring the Buddha. This one here. A chant honoring some qualities of the Buddha as awakeness, perfectedness, full completeness. So this chant, Itipi so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. We'll say the words, I'll say a couple words at a time so we know it. Itipi so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. Yes. We'll repeat it, you'll get it. You can always just sing ah. The Pali words become a lot. The translate says, here is an awakened one, fully perfected, complete. Bhagava, blessed one. Arahato, perfected one. Samma sambuddho, completely awake one. Letting yourself sing from the heart, from the center of the body. And letting it be not just, here is the Buddha, the awakened one, that I love. As teacher, as guide, as invisible force, as the force, whatever you feel the Buddha is to you. But it's really here sitting in this seat, in each seat in this room, is one who has in him awakeness, who is awake as his true nature, who is actually perfect, who is perfected, arahato. You actually don't need to go anywhere from where you are. It's all right here. Samma sambuddho, fully awake. May I be fully awake. Itipi so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. Itipi so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. Oh, itipi so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. Itipi so bhagava for our own well-being, for the well-being of all, for those we love, for those we don't know, and all beings everywhere. Chanting the mantra, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Just 3 times together. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be safe from harm of all kinds, inner and outer. May all the wars end. May all beings everywhere realize perfect radiant freedom, not one left behind. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Really a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Sean. And will you be able to stay around for a few minutes?
Absolutely, yeah. Happy to.
Now it's time for announcements, much more prosaic subject of discussion. I'm Paul.
Yeah, I'm Paul. I'm the host. And I wanted to bring ice cream and cake today because today's my birthday. So to move that, I bought some nice petit fours, some nice oatmeal, raisin, apricot, honey confection. And we know to clear this room as we leave. And there's tea out there, wash a cup, put it back. The Donna Bowl's out there. You don't have to contribute anything, but if you are able to contribute, the suggested donation is $5 to $8. There's a sign-up sheet, but everyone here, I don't know if anyone's new here, but there's a sign-up sheet. And if you're not on the directory, do you just add your name to the directory that's out there, right?
Sign-up sheet.
Okay. You want to be on the directory, put your name on the sign-up sheet. There's a directory of the fellowship that's updated periodically.
Any other announcements? Potlucks, meditation group? Okay.
Yes, I'm the hosting coordinator of this group, and we currently have a couple of vacancies on the hosting team. I'm specifically looking for somebody who can host on 3rd Sundays of even-numbered month, and also somebody who can host on 5th Sundays, whenever that happens. So if you're interested, please see me. Thank you.
I'm Darren, and there's a meditation group that meets at my house. I'm going to be away much of the summer, but I'll definitely be there this Tuesday. And after that, we'll have to talk about the rest of the summer. But if people want to come, it's at 7:30 to 8:30 at my house at Fulton and Baker. Just approach me if you're interested.
Jim?
Yeah, next week our speaker is Myra Dewar, who has been the executive director of the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. She's long been involved in socially engaged Buddhism. She's a wonderful speaker, terrific woman, and it'll be a treat to have her.
Any other announcements? Okay. I need to leave at 12:30. I have something that's going on. Is there anyone else with a key who could? Okay. So I'll turn it over to you at 12:30. Okay, very good. Well, we usually close with a dedication of Myrrh, but you did it so beautifully. I don't know. Should we do it again? Or should we ask him to do it again?
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.